If you have an underdog mentality, if you have an underdog mindset, if you do have this root core, like this feeling that you don't belong, there's actually a really interesting thing that no one is ever talking about here. And that is that if you are the underdog, you probably also have a fear of success too. So even if you are like, I can fucking do this, I am going to fucking do this, watch me do it, there will be some part of you from that wound of not belonging, from that wound, that lack of safety, that doesn't feel safe being seen, being perceived, being judged. And that really is the bridge that needs to be bridged. If you really want to become successful, you have to be safe to be seen, to be perceived, to be criticized, to be judged. Welcome to Healing Honeys, the podcast for girls with big dreams trying to balance it all. I'm Louise Rumball, serial entrepreneur, type A overachiever, healing girlie, and holistic wellness coach who also once got called the Jesus of modern dating. But let's get one thing straight. My healing era has never been calm. I'm talking savage dating stories, 20 cigarettes a day, daddy issues, an anxious attachment style, and an autoimmune disorder too. Today, I've spent thousands of dollars on healing and therapy, and now I'm here to guide you, love you, and laugh with you as I share my favorite tips, tricks, and rituals that have saved me along the way. With new episodes every Wednesday, expect girl talk, psychology, and the nervous system, as well as love, sex, and dating, wellness, fitness, and a little bit of business and spirituality too. So get in, honey. We are balancing healing, hustling, and life, and the best is yet to come. And if you're looking for ad-free listening or my somatic healing subscription daily devotion, just head over to the show notes. Now, let's get into it. Hi, my honeys. I am saying that today through gritted teeth because I just got 20 minutes into recording this episode and I realized the microphone was on mute. I am not even joking. One day when Healing Honeys is a total real little media empire, I am going to have someone solely to check that my microphone is not on mute. I cannot tell you how many times I've done that. I have got 20, 30 minutes into episodes before and really shared like amazing information just to realize it hasn't been recording. And it sucks so much because you kind of go into like a flow or download mode, I guess, when you're a podcaster, or at least I do. So sometimes I drop like the realest shit, like the best truth bombs, the best moments, and they just like, I lose them, like, and I can't recreate them because they're not staged. Like they were real in that moment. And that's what happened in the first 15 minutes of this episode. I just recorded and just lost. So we are going to do this whole thing again. I'm hoping it's going to be amazing. I'm sure it will be even better. Positive thinking. So thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I am in Mexico as ever, and the weather is crazy. It is literally like a tropical storm outside. And it makes me think of nearly 3 years ago when I moved here and I met my boyfriend, and the rain is just like so crazy. And I remember that we were in the middle of a tropical storm. I don't think it was an actual hurricane because Mexico has actual hurricanes, but it felt almost like that. Like the winds were insane. It was just like really crazy. Anyway, he was like, okay, cool. I'll be at your house in 30. I'm like, what do you mean? He drove on a motorbike in this weather, the craziest storm, just to come and see me. I remember he walked through the door soaking wet and he just looked at me and it was just like love. Like, oh my God. It was in that moment I realized like doing the work actually works because I have a man who is driving across the craziest tropical storm on a motorbike, soaked through from head to toe, just to come and spend one evening with me. There have been guys before that wouldn't even come 5 minutes down the fucking road to meet me in a bar. So just a small little interlude to let you know that this work really does work. And today I'm here. Very rainy outside. Very happy to be inside with you. Let's just hope the power holds. Otherwise, the recording doesn't work. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about the underdog mindset, that I can do this, I'm going to prove you wrong, that kind of comes from the shadow side of us, that comes from the wounded side of us, that often comes from the more subconscious side of us. And you might have listened to my life update a couple of weeks back, a couple of episodes back. And in that episode, I was talking about how this is something that I'm actually real time healing right now. It is something that I am going through, working through in therapy, working through with my somatic healing, which is really where the magic happens. And I share that sometimes I feel like I'm a bit of an outsider in the podcast community. And I don't think being in Mexico helps because it means that I never go to any events and I don't really do in-person recordings.
but I also just watch these other influencers, these other creators, these other podcasters who are maybe all repped by the same people. That means they all go on each other's podcasts. They all share each other's audiences. And I kind of feel like I'm just out here, like on my own, the lone wolf, like trying to do my own thing, trying to believe in myself, trying to know that like if you show up consistently over time as a good person and you put your heart and soul into something, like it will reach the people that it's meant to reach. And that is happening for sure. But I took it to therapy because I was like, why do I feel this way? Like I'm such a girl's girl. Like I so believe that everyone can win. But why in this moment do I feel like I'm not going to be able to win because they're winning, you know? So this is real time healing. This is something that I'm going through. We're going to talk about that kind of underdog mindset. And one of the coolest things that I've learned in therapy is this doesn't start in adulthood. So you might have the underdog mentality in adulthood, but it started so long before that. And I'm going to share a little bit around what I've learned about my underdog mentality, and then I'm going to share some things that might relate to you and then how we can heal it. So let's rewind on my story. My therapist helped me understand that this was actually a pattern related to belonging that started a very long time ago. So it actually started with me and my brother. And this is something that I've kind of loosely touched upon on the podcast before. We were not close as siblings. We really, really did not get on. We used to physically fight with each other. I think in hindsight, there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of suppressed emotions in our family, in our bodies. We probably weren't expressing how we felt. There is a lot to unpack there. I'm not going to do that. But I think the most important thing to understand here was that it all tied back to my father wound. And my dad lost his dad very, very young. It was very sad. There's a lot of trauma there that I don't even know if he has worked through. But because he lost his dad so young, I believe that my brother coming into this world was sort of very healing for him because he got to play out the relationship that he never had with his dad. And I can have so much compassion for that, right? Like I can get that. But also because my dad is on the autism spectrum and is obsessed with sport. I mean, obsessed. I mean, like I just like have never met anyone who knows like more information about everything and watches everything religiously. Maybe, you know, someone like that too. And that's all fine and well, unless you're my mum. That's a whole nother thing. But what this meant is that my brother, who was very, very good at sports when he was younger, really was like the star in my dad's eyes. Now, I'm sure that if you asked my dad if he thought I was the star, he would have said that, of course, I was the star as well. I was the captain of my gymnastics team. I danced with the National Youth Ballet, the London Junior Ballet, got rejected by the Royal Ballet, but that's fine. So it wasn't like I was like out here, like not doing anything. I was also kind of doing things that I loved. And I was, I guess, in some ways just enjoying them as a kid. And in other ways, probably looking for my parents' approval, as we all do. And my dad, bless his soul, he was there on the sides of the lacrosse pitch, the netball pitch. But I would say like 80% of the time he was on the side of my brother's pitch. So I don't think I ever spoke about this as a kid. I don't think I ever said like, I feel X, Y, Z. I don't think I even realized that I felt this way. But going into therapy now has helped me realize that this was something that started like way back when, that probably informed my nervous system, that I felt like I was like less superior than my brother, less important than my brother, less valuable than my brother, less worthy than my brother. So that is where between the ages of 0 to 7, we have those first belief sets like wired into our nervous system. And then everything else kind of like builds those beliefs or replaces those beliefs. And I think for me, like, I do think I had a good sense of self as a kid. I don't really remember, but I definitely didn't have like mad self-esteem issues. I always thought I was like pretty happy. But then my therapist helped me understand that my best friend at school, she was like the superstar, right? She was the person that played lacrosse for England and flew to America and got a scholarship. And I loved her so much. She was my best friend. I never felt like not enough at the time. But I think looking back and going through therapy and now understanding what I know about somatic healing, I can see that it was like the repetition of a pattern that had already started. And it was like me not being the best. It was me being second best. It was me feeling like less superior. She was also so beautiful. The guys loved her. And I think I definitely felt like I just wasn't really that pretty in comparison to her. You know, the guys would always choose her over me. And so that kind of exacerbated this underdog mindset further. Again, I wasn't really like aware of it at the time. Fast forward, we're at school. I'm getting straight A's. I'm doing pretty good to like alleviate this feeling of the underdog mindset. I got into an incredible university in England called Durham, which is like, I think is very difficult to get into. I don't know what the deal is with it now. I got into one of the most difficult to get into colleges. Like I was doing the things that I needed to validate myself to make me feel like, yeah, you're worthy, you're good enough, you can keep up with everyone. And I do think that I kind of kept those feelings at bay for like a really long time. Like I genuinely was sort of pretty good with how life was going. But I think that these feelings have kind of resurfaced in the last few weeks or months or maybe even years, because the thing about being a podcaster, the thing about being a creator is there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of other people doing exactly the same thing as you. And some people are doing books and some people are doing merch and some people have production teams and some people have management teams and agencies. And I've done a lot of it myself. I do have an agent. I did have a manager, but realistically, like I'm just here filming with my own home setup, right? I'm not in a studio. I'm not paying thousands of dollars for recording. I'm kind of out here doing it on my own. And I do think that is the underdog mindset, the underdog mentality. And going to therapy has helped me realize like this is just a pattern. It's been in my nervous system for a long time and specific instances outside of us trigger it. So you might find that you don't compare yourself to other people until maybe you're dating and you want the guy or you want the girl to choose you, or you're going for a promotion and you want to get it and you start comparing yourself to the other people going for it. And if you get it, if you get the promotion, if you get the guy, if you get the girl, those deep wounds, they're like alleviated for a hot second. But if you don't, they are exacerbated, right? So I just think it's really interesting to kind of understand this underdog mindset like as a pattern that is wired deep into our nervous system. And that is what we are going to talk about today. And just to get into this, I also think it's really important to note that there is the actual underdog experience where you will start life out with less resources, with systemic inequality, with less opportunities, with deep rooted childhood trauma, familial trauma, ancestral trauma. I have seen firsthand, and I have been in love with someone firsthand. In fact, two people, like my boyfriend now, he would admit himself, like he came from the ghetto in Mexico City. And his parents did everything they could to give him a good education and to love him and to give him everything. And they are amazing people. They've done such a good job. But being in this relationship now has definitely checked me on my privilege as like a white, cis-bodied, heteronormative, I hate that word, individual. I'm so aware of this. And actually, where I'm sitting right now in this insane penthouse overlooking the jungle, glass covered windows. I want to turn the camera and show you guys, but I'm not going to. There are building sites down there that are construction sites, and there are people living in like open aired hammocks, and it's pouring with rain. And I just kind of thought to myself before I started recording, like in this lifetime, I'm up here, but in my next lifetime, because I believe in that, I very easily could be and probably will be down there. So I'm very aware of how much privilege I have, and so many of us have. And I definitely do feel like the last two people I've been in love with have really helped me to check myself on my privilege. So I do just want to take a moment to acknowledge that like the underdog mindset really can come from like a resource perspective, like the family, the culture, the society that you are built into and that you are born into. And that definitely can cement the mindset that you are the underdog, that it is going to be harder for you to overcome the obstacles that other people don't have to face. That is very real. We see it all the time. People saying they came from nothing. So I do just want to acknowledge that. That's not really going to be the focus of today's episode, but I do think it's important to understand that if that is something you've gone through, or if you've gone through mad childhood trauma, or even any childhood trauma, I do think you can be more likely to identify with this underdog mindset, like the resilient survivor, the scarcity mindset, like this isn't going to work for me, the I just have to do and struggle to stay afloat mindset. And I don't believe that like abundance mindset is going to help you heal that. It's a lot of generational trauma, but I do believe that in today's world, particularly with social media, I believe that we have more opportunities than ever before to break out of the conditions that we have been born into. And I think that that is a hopeful possibility for some people. Now, outside of that element of the underdog mindset, I want to talk about back in the family unit. So I touched briefly on the overlooked child syndrome, and I wouldn't say I was like necessarily overlooked, but I do think that that's probably how my inner child felt. And I think that you might understand this if you are like the quiet one in a loud family, or if you have loads of siblings. sometimes I look at people that have like 8, 9 siblings and I'm just like, how? I feel at this point in my life, I couldn't even give one kid the attention that it needs to develop into like a very healthy, emotionally mature adult. And then I look at these TikTok families who have 9 siblings and the older children are becoming like the parents of the younger children. The whole thing is wild. And I definitely think that that is something that can play a part into this underdog mindset as well, particularly if you're the quiet one in a loud family, or maybe your achievements were unnoticed or less noticed, or they were less like traditionally celebrated than other things in the family. Maybe you had a sibling that needed more love and more care and support. And that in turn can basically tell your subconscious mind, like, that sibling is more important than me, is more loved than me, has more attention than me. Even if you know on a conscious level, like that sibling needed it for health reasons or whatever the reasons were, I do think it's important to understand that these things can tie into this underdog mindset. I also think it's just really important to understand this concept of like feeling different or not belonging, because that's something that I've spoken about a lot in therapy with my therapist about this, which is that if you felt like the black sheep of your family, you might be more likely to feel like the black sheep in any other community too. And then if you feel like you are different, or maybe you are neurodivergent, you are queer, maybe if you feel like you are in a minority for whatever it is that you have lived through, this feeling different concept means that we don't feel this sense of safety in our nervous system because we don't always feel a sense of belonging. And belonging is community, and belonging is safety for our nervous system. And our belonging is very calming for the nervous system that we all live in. But isolation and alienation, being alone, being different, not belonging, those are stressful states for the nervous system. They are stressful states for the nervous system of a child, which will be pumping out stress hormones because they don't feel safe, even if you were not consciously aware of it, but also stressful for an adult. You've seen how it feels if you have social anxiety or you have to go to an event on your own. That lack of belonging, that lack of safety can have real physical impacts on your nervous system and your biology as well. And I think that this is what's so important here, is like the underdog mindset for the most part can tie back to this lack of belonging, this feeling like you were a little bit different, this feeling like maybe you weren't worthy, you weren't enough, you had to be a different way in order to achieve validation or to feel enough. And I think if you've gone through this, it's just really important that we can give love to your inner child who maybe went through things in childhood or maybe went through things in adolescence that were really not nice and were really sad or scary. And you might have normalized it. You might have been like, yeah, I was bullied at school, but like, I'm fine. Or like, yeah, but like everyone's bullied. But the truth is that that's very scary. But we don't need to normalize these wounds. We actually need to understand the wounds, and we need to release the energy associated with the wounds and release the limiting beliefs associated with the wounds, and then fill those wounds back up with love and healing and compassion. And that is when we can rewire the beliefs. And this is why when people say, confidence, confidence, just fake it till you make it, just fake it till you make it, that's almost like having a moldy wall and you were just trying to put paint and plaster on top of the mold. Anyone that's ever done that knows that the mold doesn't go away. The mold just actually gets worse and then comes back. And so this is why, if you've done our free 7-day Confidence Queen challenge, where I take you on a journey of really understanding some of these wounds and limiting beliefs and how you can rewire them through somatic healing, then you'll know that the very first day is called Rewind to Rewire. You need to go back, rewind to when these beliefs were laid. And that very first day is an inner child meditation. So if you want to join us on that free 7-day challenge, it's linked in the show notes. We're not running it live at the moment, but you can do it on your own. 7 days, step by step, very easy. But yeah, it ties back to the wounds that we first experienced in childhood and then, I guess, developed in adolescence and kind of got exacerbated for the most part, because it's not always the case. Like, I think you can have these wounds healed in adolescence if you find incredible friends, if you find love, if you go through life-changing and heart-changing experiences that make you feel accepted and you find your community and you can kind of communicate through your nervous system that way. But for a lot of people, the situations just get exacerbated and exacerbated. Now, what I want to talk about here is that there's obviously a positive to this mindset of the I'm going to prove you wrong mindset, which is like the underdog mindset can be powerful when it is driven by some element of self-belief, which is like, even if I have to do this on my own, I can fucking do it. And that is how I feel. So I wouldn't really say I have self-esteem issues. I just would say I have like belonging issues. And I truly believe that I can get there. I truly believe that I am dedicated enough and smart enough and consistent enough that I am en route to going where I want to go. But it's lonely, right? I sometimes feel very alone doing this, which is why I love it when you guys message me, because I'm like, okay, I'm actually not alone. Like, I am doing this for people that are listening, and then they message me. So yes, there are benefits of this mindset. Like, you really have seen people like Tom Brady, who was something like drafted 199th out of 200 in the NFL draft, well into the 6th round. And he was never the star. He was the 4th string quarterback, and he literally would get given like 2 balls in every match. I don't think that's how you say it, but like 2 throws or 2 passes. I don't know. I don't watch that sport. But his story is so cool, is that he basically was complaining, and he was basically told that if you turn every single opportunity that you have, even the smallest one, into gold, you are going to get to where you want to go. And he says that he treated every throw as if it was the Super Bowl, ensuring that his effort and precision were unmatched. His relentless focus on maximizing the few chances he got eventually built his legendary status, culminating in 7 Super Bowl titles and a legacy as one of the greatest players in NFL history. Now, that is the truth of the underdog mindset. It's like, you know you can do it, but the opportunities are small, and you have to fucking show up for yourselves in those moments when so many other people would give up. So many other players would be like, I'm never going to do this. This is never going to work for me. I'm done here. But Tom Brady didn't give up. I'm also not going to give up. And maybe you can relate that you're not going to give up too. Even on the days when you're like, I'm tired, this is hard, this hurts, you just keep going. So in some ways, I really think that there is a positive side of that. I really think we see some very successful people who just really believe in themselves, and they do get to where they want to go. But what I also want to talk about here is the neurobiology of resilience, like stress and grit. Yes, it can fuel determination, resilience, and ambition, but chronic stress combined with like lack of belonging or loneliness or isolation and the I'll just do it myself mentality, that can have long-term effects on the nervous system. It keeps the body in a state of prolonged fight or flight. It does not allow you to feel safe and warm and loved. And that means that you are going to have stress hormones pumping around your body. And I don't need to, for the 100th time, tell you that long-term chronic stress is at the root of nearly all disease in existence. Because what is disease? Disease is dis-ease. It is your body not working as it is meant to. Your body cannot function as it is meant to if it is in sustained states of stress. Because as human beings, we are not meant for that. We did not evolve to do that. We are meant to go through short, sharp bursts of stress and then come back to baseline. So the long-term impacts of stress is very real. The connection to cancer is very real. The connection to autoimmune disorders are very real. The connection to chronic diseases are very real. As someone who has had a 14-year chronic pain disorder and did not heal it until I started somatic healing. And what does somatic healing do? It brings down the stress in your body. It reduces your cortisol. It brings down those stress hormones. It balances out your chemistry. That was me. I didn't believe it, but it's true. So I do want you to understand that if this is you, this hyper independent mindset, this I can fucking do it all, this shadow side of you that is driving you to prove everyone right, to prove like, I'll fucking show you. You'll see when I get there that I could do it on my own after all. That's not always the healthiest for our physical health, for our mental health. So I really just do want you to understand that there are downsides to this mindset and to this mentality as well. And it's sometimes hard to learn to be kind to ourselves in these moments, because we do often feel like, if I don't do it, no one's going to fucking do it for me. If I don't do this, I'm not going to change my life. If I don't do this, I'm not going to build wealth for my children. You know, there's a lot of pressure to do the things that we want to do in today's world. So I really do get that burning desire to achieve. That is me. I am there with you. But part of my journey is also learning to soften and to acknowledge that my body, particularly the female body on this 28-day hormonal cycle, we need those periods of softness and rest and rejuvenation alongside the underdog mindset, alongside the grit, the determination, the resiliency and ambition. Because what is the point of getting there but being burnt out, lonely, sick and not the most optimal version of you. I know that I would prefer to slow down by like 10, 20% and arrive there 10 to 20% later, a little softer, a little better taken care of, but still achieving my goals. Now, one thing we touched on before we wrap this episode is that actually, if you have an underdog mentality, if you have an underdog mindset, if you do have this root core, like this feeling that you don't belong, there's actually a really interesting thing that no one is ever talking about here. And that is that if you are the underdog, you probably also have a fear of success too. So even if you are like, I can fucking do this, I am going to fucking do this, watch me do it, there will be some part of you from that wound of not belonging, from that wound, that lack of safety, that doesn't feel safe being seen, being perceived, being judged. And that really is the bridge that needs to be bridged. If you really want to become successful, you have to be safe to be seen, to be perceived, to be criticized, to be judged. And this is another day in that confidence challenge that we did, an entire day on telling our subconscious mind that it is safe to be seen, safe to be perceived by others, safe for us to forge our way in this world, even if others don't agree with it, even if others have things to say about it. Really, it doesn't matter as long as you know whose opinions you care about. And another thing that I think people struggle with this underdog mindset is not just the fear of being seen, but it's also fear of imposter syndrome or just experiencing imposter syndrome. Now, I've never really experienced imposter syndrome too much, but this thing I've been going through recently, this like kind of feeling on the outside of the podcast circuit, that is imposter syndrome in action. Like, I don't really feel like I'm worthy of messaging these people being like, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? Because I feel like a bit like the outsider, like I'm not worthy of being there. And that is the key word, worthy. If you are experiencing imposter syndrome, it ties back to the root that you don't feel worthy of the success. You don't feel deserving of the success. You feel like it was a fluke. And actually starting to work on that deep rooted self-worth, which we also cover in the Confidence Queen Challenge, that is how you start to heal the imposter syndrome. Because you start to believe, I am worthy of this. I can hold space for this. I believe in myself. I am deserving. I can be perceived, I can be seen, I can be judged, because I know I deserve to be here. I know I deserve to be sat here as much as the person next to me, that I have worked as hard, that I have been as consistent, that I have put in the hours, whatever those hours might look like. And that for me is super interesting, is that imposter syndrome actually goes so much deeper than anyone is ever telling you. So as we come to wrap this up, I hope you've enjoyed this. I definitely enjoyed jamming on this topic. I do feel like there's beauty in being the underdog. I do think that it can really build you into an ambitious, resilient, gritty person that's like, fuck what you think, I'm going to do it and I'm going to show you exactly how it can be done. But I think it's also important to understand that this underdog also is existing from a place of lack, a place where something was missing that is driving us to be this person now. And so as much as the underdog is fueled by grit and resiliency and determination, the underdog also needs to be driven by love and compassion and understanding for what our inner child went through and how as adults today, we are maybe using the things around us, our careers, our dating experiences as ways to validate. It's about asking yourself, what does the underdog mentality mean for you? Where did it stem from? And what is it driving you to do? And is there a way that you can soften how you feel, how you talk to yourself, and your belief that you can get there through love and softening this belief that everything has to be done on your own and that you are the only person that can get you there? Because when you start to work on that wound of belonging, you start to accept help and understand that you don't have to be the lonely underdog anymore. If you want to redeem that free 7-day Confidence Queen Challenge, that is linked in the show notes for you. If you want to just come and get started on your somatic healing journey, daily devotion on my healing portal is also linked in the show notes for you. This is where you actually release the energy in these beliefs and rewire them to feel belonging and enough and worthy and somatic healing. That's what slaps. That's what really works. But most of all, thank you so much for joining. I loved the Tom Brady story. I honestly think that right now you might feel like you're only getting 2 passes in every single game of life, tiny opportunities. But the truth is if you give them everything, you release the beliefs that are holding you back, that you can't get there. And with inspired thought and intention and energy, you move towards your goals with love and compassion and grace for yourself, where you've been, what you've lived through. I believe that you can get wherever you want to go. As ever, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you are liking the podcast, following, subscribing, so you get notified as soon as an episode drops. And please, if you enjoyed this, share it to your social media story, tag me so we can reach more healing honeys, more people that want to join us on this journey, and we can help even more people. I love you guys so much. I am now going to watch the lightning, watch the rain, and hope that this apartment doesn't flood, because that's a very real thing here in Tulum. Goodbye.